Worthy impulse. The impulse of the desire for knowledge, which in its turn assists the better perception and even the closer understanding of the essence of any object on which, as it sometimes happens, the attention of a contemporary man might be concentrated. And therefore I am even willing with pleasure to satisfy this curiosity which has arisen in you at the present moment. Now listen, and try to justify and not to disappoint my expectations. This original personality of mine, already smelled out by certain definite individuals from both choirs of the judgment seat above, whence objective justice proceeds, and also here on earth, by as yet a very limited number of people, is based, as I already said, on three secondary specific data formed in me at different times during my preparatory age. The first of these data, from the very beginning of its arising, became, as it were, the chief directing lever of my entire wholeness, and the other two, the vivifying sources, as it were, for the feeding and perfecting of this first datum. The arising of this first datum proceeded when I was still only, as is said, a chubby mite. My dear, now deceased grandmother was then still living, and was 100 and some years old. When my grandmother, may she attain the kingdom of heaven, was dying, my mother, as was then the custom, took me to her bedside, and as I kissed her right hand, my dear now deceased grandmother placed her dying left hand on my head, and in a whisper, yet very distinctly said, "Eldest of my grandsons, listen, and always remember my strict injunction to you. In life, never do as others do." Having said this, she gazed at the bridge of my nose, and evidently noticing my perplexity and my obscure understanding of what she had said, added, somewhat angrily and imposingly, "Either do nothing, just go to school, or do something nobody else does." Whereupon she immediately, without hesitation, and with a perceptible impulse of disdain for all around her, and with commendable self-cognizance, gave up her soul directly into the hands of his truthfulness, the Archangel Gabriel. I think it will be interesting and even instructive to you to know that all this made so powerful an impression on me at that time that I suddenly became unable to endure anyone around me. And therefore, as soon as we left the room where the mortal planetary body of the cause of my arising lay, I, very quietly, trying not to attract attention, stole away to the bin where during Lent the bran and potato skins for our sanitarians, that is to say, our pigs, were stored, and lay there, without food or drink, in a tempest of whirling and confused thoughts, of which, fortunately for me, I had then in my childish brain still only a very limited number, right until the return from the cemetery of my mother, whose weeping on finding me gone, and after searching for me in vain, as it were, overwhelmed me. I then immediately emerged from the bin, and standing first of all on the edge, for some reason or other, with outstretched hand, ran to her, and clinging fast to her skirts, involuntarily began to stamp my feet, and why, I don't know, to imitate the braying of a donkey belonging to our neighbor, a bailiff. Why this produced such a strong impression on me just then, and why I almost automatically manifested so strangely, I cannot until now make out. Though during recent years, particularly on the days called Shrovetide, I pondered a good deal, trying chiefly to discover the reason for it. I then, had only the logical supposition that it was perhaps only because the room in which this sacred scene occurred, which was to have tremendous significance for the whole of my further life, was permeated through and through with the scent of a special incense brought from the monastery of Old Athos, and very popular among followers of every shade of belief of the Christian religion. Whatever it may have been, this fact still now remains a bare fact. During the days following this event, nothing particular happened in my general state, unless there might be connected with it the fact that during these days I walked more often than usual with my feet in the air, that is to say, on my hands. My first act, obviously in discordance with the manifestation of others, though truly without the participation not only of my consciousness but also of my subconsciousness, occurred on exactly the 40th day after the death of my grandmother, when all our family, our relatives, and all those by whom my dear grandmother, who was loved by everybody, had been held in esteem, gathered in the cemetery according to custom, to perform over her mortal remains reposing in the grave what is called the requiem service. When suddenly, without any rhyme or reason, instead of observing what was conventional among people of all degrees of tangible and intangible morality, and of all material positions, that is to say, instead of standing quietly as if overwhelmed with an expression of grief on one's face, and even if possible with tears in one's eyes, I started skipping round the grave as if dancing, and sang, "Let her with the saints repose, now that she's turned up her toes, oi, oi, oi. Let her with the saints repose, now that she's turned up her toes," and so on and so forth. And just from this it began that in my entirety a something arose which, in respect of any kind of, so to say, aping, that is to say, imitating the ordinary automatized manifestations of those around me, always and in everything engendered what I should now call an irresistible urge to do things not as others do them. At that age, I committed acts such as the following. If, for example, when learning to catch a ball with the right hand, my brother, sister, and neighbor's children who came to play with us threw the ball in the air, I, with the same aim in view, would first bounce the ball hard on the ground, and only when it rebounded would I first, doing a somersault, catch it, and then only with the thumb and middle finger of the left hand. Or if all the other children slid down the hill head first, I tried to do it, and moreover each time better and better, as the children then called it, backside first. Or if we children were given various kinds of what are called Abaranian pastries, then all the other children, before putting them in their mouths, would first of all lick them, evidently to try their taste and to protect the pleasure, but I would first sniff one on all sides, and perhaps even put it to my ear and listen intently, and then, though only almost unconsciously, yet nevertheless seriously, muttering to myself, "So and so and so you must, do not eat until you bust," and rhythmically humming correspondingly, I would only take one bite, and without savoring it would swallow it, and so on and so forth. The first event during which there arose in me one of the two mentioned data which became the vivifying sources for the feeding and perfecting of the injunction of my deceased grandmother, occurred just at that age when I changed from a chubby mite into what is called a young rascal, and had already begun to be, as is some